Expensive water bill.
Yeah, they might get a higher than usual water bill. Higher than usual water bill. They might notice, wet patch on the ground. Could be outside. It could be inside. Hissing in the walls. They could even notice a dripping tap. Yeah, usually they're the key signs. Not really, I think. But if we had to put it down, leaks. Hot water leaks will tend to occur more in when the weather starts to cool. So I guess, coming out of summer and into winter, and usually get that first cold snap, and expansion and contraction in those copper pipes. What we usually see is mainly in the commercial buildings at the top of the flow and return lines, where the line starts returning back down to the main hot water tank, right on that point there. That's where they usually go. Would you say that?
Yeah, definitely hot water seasons when it gets cold.
Yeah, and not only the pipe work, actually the tanks as well. So we do find that hot water tanks will split more in the winter than the summer. But in saying that, they can go any time of the year. But we do notice a peak in hot water sales over that time. What causes the leaks most of the time? It does vary.
Ground movement.
Yeah, tree roots, ground movement. They're probably the two biggest major causes. Also, you get the expansion and contraction of copper pipes. It might be in the walls, and that could be rubbing up against a nail or something like that, which, over time wears a hole throughout the pipe. And, the thickness of the wall of the pipe tends to deteriorate over time. Sometimes water hammer, but not so much. It's mainly, most leaks are caused by, I would say, underground tree roots, or where a pipe's coming into a building and then where it comes underneath the footing.
Mostly the older ones.
Most of the older houses, because copper itself does have a longer lifespan. When we do see leaks in newer houses, they're usually on a plastic pipe, and it's usually on a joint, or you might have a plasterer who's screwed a hole into a pipe, and sometimes you might find that the screw is rusted out over time. So then you do get a leak. It could be 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the track. But it's horses for courses, really. The newer houses, the leaks are on the plastic pipes, and sometimes not so much anymore. You'd get instances where rats would eat copper pipes and go searching for water. Not copper pipes, sorry, plastic pipes. The rats would go eat the plastic pipe, and you'd be out there fixing a leak one week, and the next week you get called out for another leak in the roof. Get up there, and there's another section of pipe work that's been eaten by rats. And but I think these days pipe work, plastic pipes have like a deterrent, so the rats really don't like chewing the pipes anymore. But usually the leaks with plastic pipe occur on a joint, and it's usually a joint that hasn't been crimped properly. Yeah, sure. So, if a customer does notice a water leak, generally what they'll do is they jump online, they try and find a plumber. If they ring us, we'll, one of the girls in the office will answer. And usually we'll just try and triage the call and see how urgent it is. So we'll say to them, is the leak inside or outside? Is it causing any damage to the property? Do you know how to turn the water off, till a plumber gets there? And, really just try and make sure that, we're taking the stress out of the situation for the customer, because,
walk them through how to isolate it over the phone if we can.
Yeah. And what you don't want is, if the leak is inside the house, like it's a burst flex hose or something, then that, it's causing damage to the property, and you don't want the customer freaking out. So what we'll do is let them know how to turn the water off. Then, the emergency is taken out of the situation. They can, start cleaning up a bit of the water and a bit of the mess. And then what we'll do, we'll turn up, and when the plumber turns up, generally speaking, he'll assess the property, work out, where the water meter is, and, work through a process of elimination, work out, as Brett said, is it hot water? Is it cold water? Is it inside? Is it outside? Is it in the front yard? Is the pipe copper? Is it plastic? Can we use our leak locating gear to trace the pipe?
Check pits and stuff like that to see if the water's if they have a high water bill and you don't know where the water's actually coming from. Check pits and stuff, because sometimes the water can leak through the ground and get into your stormwater drainage system, and then unbeknownst to the customer, they don't know they have a water leak, but their water's actually getting away through their drainage system. So there's a few different things and a few different avenues we can to locate and identify where the leak's coming from, and what steps we have to take to try and locate and fix that leak.
I mean, sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can turn up to a job and you're like, oh, there's the leak. Is it a concealed leak or is it an obvious leak? Depending on the type of leak, will determine what sort of tools that we use. So we might use a tool, like you mentioned, a moisture meter. If there's a leak in, say, a shower, you can go up to the gyprock and check how much moisture is in the gyprock or in the timber work, or seeing how much moisture is, in the certain area. Then, we might move to a pressure test. So we can do a pressure test and hook up a gauge to the water service and see if there's a pressure drop. That's a pretty effective test, but it doesn't really tell you where the leak is. It just tells you that you do have a leak.
Which is good sometimes that's good to identify if it's a cold leak or a hot water leak. If it's in like a bigger block of units, you can hook up a pressure gauge to a cold line, hot line, and then if you do get a pressure drop, we can find out which specific line it's on.
Mm-hmm. And then we also do pipe locating as well. So, mainly for the copper pipes, the metallic pipes, sorry. What we can do is we can put a current down the pipe and we can trace those pipe works back. So if the pipe's in the ground or if it's in the wall, we can trace those pipes. We can't so much trace the plastic pipes, but with the plastic pipes, what you can do is use a listing device or acoustic leak locating, which is a little bit harder, but that's still another option available to locate the pipe.
Which uses the headset and a wand to go over. The idea is behind it to trace out the line or identify where the line runs, mark that all down on the ground. Then you get the acoustic listening device and listen to over the different sections of the pipe to try and see if we can get a ding in our ear to say, okay, there's a noise here. It's a bit more louder here than in one spot than the next spot. So try and narrow down at least like a section where the water leak could potentially be.
We do all our leak location in-house, where a lot of other companies might just outsource it. So they either don't know how or don't have the equipment to locate leaks. So the good thing is we're a one-stop shop. So if a customer calls in and they've got a concealed water leak and they don't know where it is, what we'll do, we'll come out, we'll assess the site, we'll work out whether or not if it's a concealed leak or an obvious leak. And if it's a concealed leak, we'll go through our process. But you're just calling one person. You're calling the plumber. We'll be there from start to finish.
Also, like it's how we approach the job. Like if we have to dig up a section to, I don't know, you might want to isolate one section of a piece of pipe work. But if there's a section if a water service runs through grass, then a bit of concrete, then paved area, and we have to cap off a section just to see if it is, at the front of the house, back of the house, for example. We're not going to start chopping up concrete if we don't have to. There's an easier way to go about it. We'd like to go down that route. Like we approach every job if it's our house. Like if it's my house, I don't want to chop open the driveway and have to re-concrete. It doesn't look nice unless I absolutely have to. But if I can dig a hole in the grass, which is a lot easier to restore, I'd go down that path first to get a result.
It's kind of like if you go to a GP, mate, you might walk into a GP, you might have an issue with your heart. You don't walk in there and they give you open heart surgery straight away to see what's wrong.
Yeah.
Look, I'd always recommend if you do have a concealed leak, definitely get somebody out there who's trained in leak detection to actually come out, trace the pipe work, locate the leak, rather than just let it leak. Because the thing is with water leaks, they get worse. They don't get better. And over time, they're going to cause more and more damage to the house or to the surroundings. You're going to lose water, which, is not good for the environment. But also, there are other things that we can do in terms of claiming back for lost water. So Sydney Water will do a concealed leak claim form. So if you don't know where the leak is,
you're unaware of it.
You're unaware of it, and you just get a big water bill. You can get a plumber to come out. And there must be a licensed plumber. The licensed plumber come out, fix the leak, does the customer an invoice up, and we can help the customer go through the process, go through the form, and claim any costs back, any extra water use back over and above their normal water usage.
Within a period or 24-month period.
So, yeah. There's this one job that stands out to me. It was a guy, what was his name? His name was Sam. He was over in Annandale and he owned he was a landlord, but he owned a bakery. There was a bakery in the warehousing complex that he owned. Massive operation, big warehouse. And I remember he called us out for a water leak, and he didn't know where it was. So he called us in. We went over the property and we started the water meter and could see the water meter ticking over really fast, but there was no signs of water anywhere. We ended up seeing and noticing there was some water going through a pit, and it hadn't rained in a little while. So we're like, okay, that's a good starting point to look. So, obviously that told us that there was a leaking pipe and there was water going into a stormwater line, getting to the stormwater line. We don't know how, but the cracked stormwater pipe or an ag line or something. And we ended up tracing the pipe, then using our acoustic listening device, and ended up pinpointing where the leak was coming from. We dug it up, we fixed it, and we found out there was a 15 millimeter copper pipe that was going to a garden tap, which is undersized for a garden tap, but that's beside the point. That 15 millimeter pipe that was leaking had just completely sheared off, and then that customer from the bakery ended up getting a $17,000 water bill. And then we fixed it, we put the claim form in with Sydney Water, and I'm assuming he got money back over and above his water usage bill, but yeah, he was a happy customer, that guy.
I've had one where there's had a copper pipe running underneath a bedroom, and then they didn't know until they got the high water bill. We came out, we traced it all out. We found out that we don't actually have to physically chop up the floating floor, remove the bed, tarp everything up. We traced all the copper lines, and we found out if we picked it up from just outside where it enters the house to this downstairs bedroom, we can actually run it up along the wall, because it was like a tiered house, a split level. We can run it up along the wall, across, and then into the subfloor, and then tee into the pipe work after the fact of where this water leak was. So we didn't have to chop up inside at all. We actually diverted the pipe around, which saved them chopping up their floating floors, re-concreting. It was just more of a diversion, which saved them.
I think that's the big difference when you do get, a plumber who specialises in leak locating and pipe tracing, rather than just getting a pipe locating guy, a leak locating guy out themselves. Because
understand how pipes run.
The leak locating guy, and a lot of plumbers, what they'll do is they'll get called out to a leak, they'll attend to the leak, contact a leak location guy. The leak location guy will be subcontracted out. He might come out in 2 or 3 days' time. So there's a bit of a delay there. A lot of the time, the plumber won't attend at the same time. The leak location guy comes back. The leak locating guy will say, there's your leak there. But when it's done in-house, we can understand and we get to know the property. We get to know where the pipes are run. And then we can think, okay, well, hang on a second. So if there's a leak right here and we know the pipes are running from A, B to C, it might even be cheaper not to dig it up where it is leaking. What we could do is say, okay, well, let's do a diversion around the area or around it this way. Give the customer options. It's going to be less destructive. You might save them the bathroom. You might save them the landscaping. You might end up saving them a lot of money. So a lot of the times in leak location, it's more than just actually just fixing the leak or finding and fixing it. It could be a diversion, which will end up saving the customer a bit more money. The problem is, Bryce, customers, they're so focused on what the actual service is going to cost, right? So what the leak locating service is actually going to cost, or how much it's going to cost to fix their leak, right? But what the people don't understand and what they don't have the foresight to actually see is how much is it actually going to cost them to restore their landscaping or restore their bathroom, or, restore their wooden floors if the leak's underneath there, or, tiles or kitchen splashback, or, up on the roof or whatever. So what we always try and do is work out, okay, what's going to be the most economical all-round solution for the customer, not just plumbing, but
restoration
costs as well.